Persia never disappeared. It simply changed its name. But here is what nobody tells you about that change. It was not a simple rebranding. It was not a bureaucratic decision. And it was not, despite what some history books will tell you, just about nationalism. It was a civilization drawing a line in the sand. After 3,000 years of being defined by everyone except itself. So before we talk about a letter sent to embassies in 1935, we need to go back to the very beginning. Because nothing about this story makes sense unless you understand what was there before anyone decided to name it. And what was there was extraordinary. Picture a land surrounded by towering mountains and scorching deserts. The Zagros Range to the west, the Alborz to the north, and toward the center, some of the most hostile terrain on Earth. Salt flats so vast that even today, large sections are essentially uninhabited. This land does not give itself up easily. And the people who settled here, around 1500 BC, were shaped by that difficulty in ways that still echo today. They were not Arabs. That is the first thing most people get wrong. Their roots ran toward the same linguistic family that produced Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, and yes, English. In Old Persian, Madar meant mother. Pidar meant father. The same roots that survive in Latin as mater and pater. These were people with a deep, ancient identity that had absolutely nothing to do with the Arab world many today unconsciously associate with Iran. Two groups rose to dominance. The Medes in the northwest, powerful, organized, the first real empire on the plateau. And the Persians, settled further south in a region called Pars, capable, ambitious, living in the shadow of the Medes. Nobody could have imagined what was coming. Because out of those southern highlands, one man was about to change everything. Not through fear, not through destruction, but through something far more powerful and far more rare. Before Alexander, before Caesar, before any conqueror you were taught to admire, there was Cyrus. And Cyrus understood something almost no ruler before or after him ever truly grasped. Fear is expensive. Loyalty is cheap, if you know how to earn it. When Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BC, one of the most fortified cities in the ancient world, he did not burn it. He did not enslave its people. He walked in quietly and declared himself the chosen of Marduk, Babylon's own god, not a Persian god, theirs. He freed the Jewish people held in exile there, an act recorded in the Hebrew Bible with reverence normally reserved for prophets. Not a conqueror, a liberator. He did not just build an empire. He made people want to be part of it. Under Cyrus and Darius the Great, the Achaemenid Empire became the largest the world had ever seen. From the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, from Egypt to Central Asia, a road network spanning thousands of miles, a postal system faster than anything else on Earth, the world's first superpower. But here is the thing about superpowers. Every single one carries inside it the seed of its own undoing. And this one's undoing arrived from the West, young, fast, 22 years old. In 334 BC, Alexander of Macedon crossed into Persian territory. 3 battles: Granicus, Issus, Gaugamela. The greatest empire the ancient world had known collapsed. Darius III fled and was murdered by his own men. Alexander rode into Persepolis and burned part of it to the ground. And then he stopped. Here is the part that rewrites everything you think you know about this conquest. Alexander did not destroy Persia, he became it. He married Persian princesses, wore Persian robes, kept the entire Persian administrative system intact, called himself the legitimate heir of the Achaemenid kings. His own soldiers were furious. They had crossed half the world to destroy Persia, not become it. Some began to conspire against him. Alexander had a choice: pull back, reassert his Greek identity, keep his army united. He didn't. Why? What did he see that his own soldiers couldn't? He saw something that cannot be conquered, cannot be deleted, only absorbed. Persian civilization was too old, too deep, too woven into millions of people across too vast a geography. You could defeat its armies in an afternoon. You could not erase what it had built over 1,000 years. And that lesson, you cannot erase this civilization, only absorb it, would be proven again and again, because what came next made Alexander look gentle. The Sassanids rose from the very region of Fars where it all began, claiming descent from Cyrus, rebuilding Persian grandeur from scratch. For 4 centuries, they stood as one of the 2 superpowers of the ancient world, locked in near constant war with Rome, then Byzantium. Then, in the 7th century, something arrived that nobody was prepared for. Not another empire, not another conqueror on horseback. Something that would not just defeat Persia militarily, but attempt to replace its entire identity, its god, its language, its soul. Islam emerged from the Arabian Peninsula. Within decades, Arab armies shattered the Sassanids. Zoroastrianism gave way to Islam. Arabic became the language of religion and power. Everything changed. And yet, here is what makes this civilization unlike almost any other in history. It did not disappear. It shaped its conquerors instead. Persian became the literary language of the entire Islamic world. Rumi wrote in Persian. Ferdowsi wrote in Persian. Omar Khayyam wrote in Persian. The conquered culture became the intellectual backbone of the empire that had conquered it. But something was still missing, a unified political identity. That would not come until a dynasty made one of the most radical religious decisions in Islamic history, whose consequences are still reshaping the Middle East today. In 1501, the Safavid dynasty came to power, and they imposed Twelver Shia Islam as the official state religion of a country that had been predominantly Sunni. This was not peaceful. It was enforced, systematic, brutal. So why would a new dynasty risk tearing its own country apart? Because underneath the enforcement was a geopolitical calculation of stunning clarity. The dominant power to Iran's west was the Ottoman Empire, the most powerful Sunni state in the world. By making Iran definitively Shia, the Safavids built a hard theological wall between the 2 empires. Iran was no longer just a Persian-speaking region. It was the center of Shia Islam, an identity that could not be absorbed into any larger order. That fusion, Persian culture layered with Shia Islam, is the foundation of Iranian identity today. It was not natural. It was engineered. And it worked. But outside, the world still said Persia. That gap had existed for centuries. And in the 20th century, one man decided he had waited long enough to close it. But the company he was keeping when he did it would make everything deeply controversial. By the early 1900s, the country the world called Persia was broken. Britain controlled the oil. Russia controlled the north. The country was independent on paper and a pawn in practice. Then came Reza Khan, a soldier, modest origins, pure force of will, staged a coup in 1921, crowned himself Reza Shah Pahlavi in 1925. His vision? Modernize Iran, centralize power, make the world take this country seriously. That word, Persia, to him was a label, an outsider's shortcut soaked in Orientalist fantasy, the name of a place that existed in the Western mind as exotic and backward, not the name of a real, modern, capable country. So in March 1935, his government sent a formal circular to every embassy on Earth. Use Iran, not Persia, in all official correspondence, going forward. A bureaucratic note on the surface, a declaration underneath. We define ourselves. The name you will use for us is the name we have always used for ourselves. But here is where the story takes a turn historians still argue about today. Because 1935 was not a neutral year. Adolf Hitler had come to power in 1933. Nazi ideology was spreading, built on Aryan racial mythology. And Iran, the country literally named Land of the Aryans, had deep economic ties with Berlin. German engineers were building Iranian infrastructure. German companies held major contracts. Some historians argue Nazi Germany actively encouraged the name change, an ideological win, a nation adopting the Aryan label on the world stage. Iranian officials have always rejected this completely. So who is right? Both things are probably true simultaneously. Reza Shah had genuine nationalist motivations. Germany saw a propaganda opportunity. Two governments, two different reasons. One moment where their interests aligned. And then, 6 years later, Britain and the Soviet Union occupied Iran and forced Reza Shah to abdicate. The German alignment finished overnight, but the name Iran stayed.
In 1951, Prime Minister Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil, arguing Iran's resources belonged to Iranians. 2 years later, he was overthrown in a CIA and British-backed coup. The Shah reinstalled. Western oil interests protected. That memory never faded. It still shapes how Tehran reads every Western move today. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution swept the Shah from power. Khomeini declared the Islamic Republic. And here is the moment almost nobody knows about. Inside revolutionary Iran, there was a real debate about reversing the 1935 name change. Whether Iran was too associated with the monarchy just overthrown. Whether a revolutionary state needed a new name. What do you think happened? The name stayed. Because it had already transcended its origins. It no longer belonged to Reza Shah. It belonged to 3,000 years of continuous identity that no single ruler, not Cyrus, not Alexander, not Reza Shah, not Khomeini, could own. Today, Iran carries sanctions, nuclear tension, proxy wars. Persia carries something almost romantic: carpets, poetry. The memory of an ancient civilization the world still finds beautiful, even as it finds the modern country threatening. 2 names, 1 land. And in the gap between them, the entire story of how the outside world has chosen to see this civilization versus how that civilization has always seen itself. So why did Persia become Iran?
The surface answer, 1935. A letter, Reza Shah. But the real answer runs 3,000 years deep. Persia was always an outsider's name. The Greeks looked at one province, Pars, and decided it was good enough for the whole civilization. The Romans kept it. Europe inherited it. For 25 centuries, the world called this country by a label it never chose. Iran is the name this land gave itself. Before the Greeks, before Alexander, before Rome, before Islam. Possibly one of the oldest continuously used national names on Earth. And in 1935, after 25 centuries, this civilization said, quietly, firmly, without apology, enough. On your maps, in your embassies, in your history books, you will see us as we see ourselves. Persia did not become Iran in 1935. Iran was always there, waiting. Underneath every invasion, every conquest, every empire that thought it had finally finished this civilization for good. The Greeks could not erase it. Alexander could not erase it. The Arabs could not erase it. The Mongols could not erase it. The British could not erase it. Nobody could. Because some civilizations are not built on land, or armies, or oil. They are built on something older. Something that lives in the language people speak to their children at night. In the poetry memorized for 1,000 years. In the way they see themselves, quietly, stubbornly, when nobody else is watching. That is what survived. That is what always survives. And that same impulse, that insistence on being seen on your own terms, runs through every major decision Iran has made since. The oil nationalization, the revolution, the nuclear program, the proxy wars. None of it is random. It all traces back to a civilization that has spent 3,000 years refusing to be defined by anyone else.
Now I want to hear from you. If Iran had never changed its name, if the world had kept calling it Persia forever, do you think history would have been different? Would the West have treated it differently? Would the 1979 revolution still have happened? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story changed how you see Iran, then what comes next will completely change how you understand the Middle East today. Because in 1953, the CIA flew into Tehran with one mission: destroy Iranian democracy, install their man, protect Western oil. They succeeded. And that single operation is the reason the Middle East looks the way it does right now. Subscribe to History Recreated
hit the notification bell. That story is coming next, and it connects everything. See you there.